you know how much I respect you, but let's be honest here.
I don't need to be corrected, and I don't need to be told I'm dishonest, Karen. But by all means, go ahead.
I didn't say it. I said let's be honest with the American people here.
I am.
Well,
you ought to try
CR that I'm doing it right now, brother.
If you believe in progress, hit subscribe. Smug MAGA pundit Scott Jennings appeared on Kaitlan Collins' show to debate the government shutdown, a shutdown Republicans could end any time. Yet he spins it, blaming Democrats while ignoring who's actually blocking solutions. Here's the tell. This isn't just TV drama. It's a performance over accountability. One side fights for families and real consequences. The other smiles for cameras and pretends responsibility isn't theirs.
White House is arguing today.
Well, the president did try to bring them into the room the other day, and they wouldn't budge. I mean, look, the facts here are pretty simple. The Republican Party has put on the floor and voted for a clean, continuing resolution, no changes. These are Biden budget numbers, by the way, and numbers that Democrats have voted for 13 times. Nothing up our sleeves here, Kaitlan. They're trying to keep the government open long enough to negotiate things like the health care issue, which you were just debating, which I actually think maybe Republicans will wind up dealing on that. But they're not going to do it under duress, and they're not going to do it under threat of rolling back all the Medicaid reforms that were done this summer. So I think President Trump tried to bring the Democrats in. And at the end of the day, I think the American people know here they're looking at two parties. One's trying to do a bunch of funny business. One's trying to keep the doors open. And right now, I don't think the funny business side is winning in the eyes of the American people.
Karen, what's your view on that?
Well, I just want to correct something. You know, Scott, you know how much I respect you, but let's be honest here.
I don't need to be corrected, and I don't need to be told I'm dishonest, Karen. But by all means, go ahead.
I didn't say it. I said let's be honest with the American people here.
I am.
You ought to try CR that I'm doing it right now, brother. So the CR is that the Republicans have proposed is actually not clean. It's pretty dirty because it includes the $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts that the American people themselves have made clear they do not like. So it is not the same. I think it'd be a very different moment and conversation if literally we were talking about what was passed in 2024. That is not the actual fact of the case. The fact of the case is that the measure is something that, again, the American people themselves have said they do not like. The other piece of this is, I think Democrats have a clear, concise message in terms of health care. Think about this. Republicans are on the side of saying we have to protect these tax cuts for billionaires. That's going to impact the wealthiest 1%. Democrats are saying we want to protect health care for over 20 million American families. And I agree with what, I was glad Senator Smith pointed out. I also just got my email today about my health care and choosing a plan. So people are already seeing that their costs are going to go up starting in January 2026. So I think Democrats feel pretty strong about this because the politics have changed. And, the last thing I would just say on this, my first government shutdown, Scott, I know you've been through a few of them too, was in the Clinton administration. And the kind of backslapping, oh, we're just joking that we heard from the vice president today. Well, we heard that from Newt Gingrich, and he was, bracing for the fight. And we all know how that worked out. I don't think the American people like seeing the president make light of their health care or their jobs.
Scott, you want to respond?
Yeah, sure. Look, we're stunned. I'll just be honest with you. We're stunned. The Democratic constituencies are principally immigration populations and government workers. And right now,
I'm a Democrat, and I'm not an immigrant, and I'm not a government worker.
You're putting one on top of
yourself.
You're putting one on top of the other.
My mother is a Democrat. She's not an immigrant. She's not a government worker.
This is what your party relies on, and you've closed shop on government in Washington, D.C., and eventually they're going to get tired of it. There is no reason this government cannot be left
Americans
open.
Who voted for.
Here's what that really exposes. Scott Jennings bristles at being told to be honest, but he's one of the most disingenuous pundits on television. He appears on Kaitlan Collins' CNN show and Abby Phillips' program, constantly spinning narratives and spreading misinformation, all while wearing that same smug, performative smirk. Every raised eyebrow, every glance at the camera is part of the act, signaling control over a story he's twisting. And this is where democracy meets denial. Jennings lectures about President Trump wanting unity, yet he knows Trump is telling Republicans like MAGA Mike Johnson not to negotiate with Democrats. The contradiction is clear. His indignation, pure theater. His dishonesty, real and deliberate. Listen closely. This is the tell. A pundit claiming moral high ground while misleading the public, like Jennings does, undermines accountability. Citizens rely on truth to make decisions about healthcare, jobs, and families, and Jennings' performance erodes that trust. Let's be real. He spins, he deflects, he frames obstruction as principle, all while smirking through challenges from Karen Finney and others. This isn't a slip, it's strategy, and it shows why holding power accountable matters more than ever.
Kamala Harris were all immigrants?
No, I'm saying
that's not true.
I'm saying I'm listening to Democratic arguments about most policy issues, and I'm looking at Democratic energy, and it mostly has to do with things to do with immigrants, illegal and some legal, and things to do with government bureaucrats. And right now, you're putting one of your constituencies out of business.
Can I say one thing, which is that people who are in the country...
Here's what that really exposes. The Trump administration and MAGA figures like Scott Jennings are trying to put federal workers out of business. And there's nothing wrong with being a federal worker. These are Americans keeping essential services running, ensuring the country functions for everyone. Listen closely. This is where democracy meets denial. Threatening public servants isn't policy, it's political theater. Jennings spins it as strategy, but ordinary Americans pay the price.
Legally cannot get these subsidies that we're talking about.
Sure they can.
No, they can't.
No, they can't. It's federal law, Scott.
Who do you think pays when they go to the emergency room? It's the Medicaid
Scott,
emergency program.
Going to the emergency room is not getting an Obamacare subsidy.
You guys are conflating. You guys are conflating these issues. You're conflating these issues.
And you're being dishonest with
the subsidies are a separate issue. The Medicaid program cuts are a different thing.
Right, but I'm talking about subsidies.
And the Obamacare stuff are two different issues. And I said the subsidies may get negotiated over time. But what Democrats want to do is roll back what the Republican Medicaid reforms were. They want, look, I don't understand why everybody's so mad. For time immemorial, Democrats have argued that it's good. It's good for illegal immigrants to get Medicaid. Every candidate for president in 2020 raised their hand for it. In the big, beautiful bill debate, they argued it was good policy. I can't believe there's an about face of the Democratic Party on it today.
Hold on. I got a question for Karen, but Scott, I will say, people who are in the country illegally also can't get Medicaid.
Sure they can. Sure they can.
They can't get Medicaid.
They also can't register to vote. They also can't register to vote, but we just found one in Maryland who was running the Des Moines school system.
Oh my God, one!
I mean, I'm telling you guys say these things can't happen, and then they happen.
Scott, but I'm just saying it's federal law. And
you can run cover for it if you want, but they do get federal tax money. They get federal tax money. Ask Jake, he had it on today.
I'm just saying it's against federal law to do that.
It is.
Karen, can I ask you, because one thing that we've heard from Democrats over the last several months is that the president's consolidation of power is dangerous. That's how Democrats have framed this. But now what House Speaker Mike Johnson, the point he was making here last night, is that Democrats have handed the president more power by shutting the government down, because now they're canceling and stopping these contracts and saying they're going to fire a bunch of federal workers during this period. Was that a mistake in your view?
Well, but again, the president, it's a choice that the president can make. I mean, governing is all about choices, right? The leader of the country can say, hey, I'm going to protect tax cuts for billionaires, or I'm going to make sure over 20 million American families can get the subsidies they need to afford their health care and not see it double. And by the way, Russell Vought is not someone who, this government is, we know they're going to doge their way through the rest of the federal government anyway. I don't think there's much credibility in saying, hey, we're going to use this to lay people off. I mean, I just want to consider, it's a different pot of money, but think about the optics. The White House confirmed to Fox News today that the construction of the Grand Ballroom will continue while they are talking about laying people off and potentially firing people. That is outrageous. If you're serious about negotiating, as the senator said, you don't do things like that. You say, we are going to bring everybody to the table. Let's see what we can get done. And Scott, part of the reason this issue around the ACA credits, as the senator, I think, pointed out, there's not a lot of credibility here. So let's act like adults. Let's come to the table and stop making threats about, we're going to fire these people and we're going to, you know what, you're the leader. It's your job to bring people together.
Here's what that really exposes. Scott Jennings is the perfect MAGA spokesperson, not just a voice for policy, but the living embodiment of the attitude. He's smug, always smirking, performing for the camera as if the world itself is a stage and he alone controls the narrative. Watch closely. Every raised eyebrow, every deliberate glance into the lens, it's a signal, a silent code for his audience. On Kaitlan Collins' CNN show, on Abby Phillips's program, even when his head is turned, he pivots to face the camera, delivering that signature mug, that self-satisfied smirk. It's theater designed to distract from the substance, to sell authority while spinning falsehoods. And this is where democracy meets denial. Jennings repeatedly pushes the lie that undocumented immigrants are receiving Medicaid, a claim he knows is false. The reality is more nuanced. Under Reagan-era policy, hospitals may be reimbursed for emergency care, but that's not giving Medicaid to undocumented people. Yet Jennings weaponizes the misconception, repeating it like gospel, because for MAGA, perception is more valuable than truth. Listen closely. This is the tell. Jennings thrives on amplifying myths. He raises the specter of voter fraud, despite billions of ballots showing genuine fraud is vanishingly rare, often far less than 1%. Even when investigations show nothing, these narratives are recycled, repeated, and framed as undeniable fact. One case becomes enough to justify a strategy of fear, distraction, and division. The psychological play is clear. Jennings is not simply mistaken, he is performing insecurity disguised as authority. By acting smug, by pretending moral high ground, he masks the contradictions, the lies, and the harm his messaging causes to American democracy. Every raised eyebrow, every calculated smirk reinforces a narrative that favors obstruction over accountability. And let's be real, this pattern is consistent. It's not an error, it's strategy. He spins, he deflects, he frames obstruction as principle, all while dismissing the impact on real Americans, federal workers, families, and communities. Karen Finney pushes back, points out the distortions, challenges the misinformation, but Jennings remains on script, a propagandist performing for cameras and voters alike. Think historically. He would have fit seamlessly alongside Caroline Leavitt and others in 1940s Germany, spinning misinformation and disinformation for power. That's the danger. Smug theatrics and repeated lies don't just misinform. They erode trust, undermine accountability, and corrode the very foundation of democracy. So ask yourself, will you accept the distortions, the spin, the manufactured outrage pushed by Scott Jennings? Or will you side with truth, accountability, and democratic principles, as defended by Karen Finney and others? This isn't just TV drama. It's a reflection of what's at stake when misinformation meets power. I'm Evans Insider. If you stand for truth, integrity, and accountability in politics, make sure to like, subscribe, and join this conversation. Democracy depends on an informed and engaged public, and that starts with you.